I'm going to conclude my discussion of Hamlet and the ethics of revenge. And I'm going to do it by saying, first of all, that I'm really not a big fan of Hamlet. Now, I'm a big fan of Hamlet, the play, but I'm not a big fan of Hamlet, the character. And in this, I depart from the kind of academic mainstream, which loves Hamlet because, of course, Hamlet is a lot like a typical academic. Hamlet is somebody who's always soliloquizing, introspecting, navel-gazing. And it's always assumed that Hamlet is somehow raising himself to this kind of higher level. He's operating, if you will, sub specie eternitatis. He's looking at the transcendent significance of what he's doing. And in this respect, I concede Hamlet is the product of a Christian universe, very different from, say, the pagan universe of Julius Caesar, in which you don't have that kind of, you don't have those Christian assumptions. Just consider, for example, the attitude, and Shakespeare is such a genius in this. When you're looking at Julius Caesar, suicide in the pagan world is a good thing. If you commit suicide and you decide, hey, listen, I would rather, as Brutus, run on my sword than be dragged disgraced through the streets of Rome, that's considered to be a dignified and noble thing. You're preserving your honor. Contrast this with Hamlet, who recognizes that in the Christian world, suicide is a sin. He says this, "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. Or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter." So Hamlet is saying, I'm kind of thinking it would be better for me not to exist. I would kind of like to commit suicide, but you know what? God has ordained against it. I can't really do it. And yet, so Hamlet appears to be this kind of man of high moral conscience, but I don't think there are indications in the play that is not a complete characterization of Hamlet. Now, here's Hamlet in a scene in which he's about to enter into a duel with Laertes. Now, Laertes is the son of Polonius, and Hamlet has killed Polonius. Polonius was hiding behind a curtain. Polonius was admittedly spying on Hamlet. Hamlet thought it was Claudius the king, speared at Claudius, or what he thought was Claudius, and he killed Polonius. Now, Polonius' son, Laertes, wants to avenge Polonius, his father's death. And here's Hamlet, pleading his own case, speaking to Laertes. "What have I done? I here proclaim, or what I have done, I here proclaim was madness." Hamlet continues, "Was it Hamlet wronged Laertes? Never Hamlet. If Hamlet from himself be taken away, and when he's not himself does wrong Laertes, then Hamlet does it not. Hamlet denies it. Who does it then? His madness. If it be so, Hamlet is of the faction that is wronged. His madness is poor Hamlet's enemy." Now, this is all highly dubious because Hamlet is in effect pleading the insanity defense. He's saying, listen, I didn't kill your father. My madness did it. And since my madness isn't really me, I'm innocent of this. In fact, the madness is the real enemy. Now, what makes all of this particularly diabolical, I see here in Hamlet a hint of Claudius himself, is that Hamlet earlier in the play has been feigning madness. He's been pretending to be mad. And all the while he's been letting the audience know, I'm not mad. I'm just acting. I'm pretending to be mad so that they won't know that I know what happened to my father. So this claim of Hamlet, first of all, not only is it a denial of obvious responsibility, Hamlet could say to Laertes, hey, listen, I didn't mean to kill your dad, but nevertheless, I did do it. I am responsible in that sense, even though I intended to kill Claudius. That's not what he says. He actually tries to lift the blame off of himself. Now, Hamlet, of course, in the great soliloquy, to be or not to be, acts as if what's at issue here is whether human life itself is worth living. And as I tried to say yesterday, that's not the issue. To be or not to be is manifestly not the question. The real question is, will you, Hamlet, the designated king to be, the successor to the king, avenge your own father's death and get rid of the rottenness in the state of Denmark. Are you willing to do it, yes or no? Hamlet himself knows that he should do it. Politically, he knows that is his responsibility. At one point, in fact, he's watching an acting performance, the so-called players, and one of the actors is full of tears. He's doing a scene from ancient Greece involving the wife of King Priam. This is the fall of Troy. King Priam's wife was named Hecuba. And the scene is so moving. There are tears that the actor is producing even while acting the scene. Here's Hamlet. Tears in his eyes. Distraction in his aspect, a broken voice, his whole function, suiting with forms to his conceit, and all for nothing, for Hecuba. What's Hecuba to him? Or he to Hecuba that he should weep for her? Hamlet is saying, even this actor, who's only acting out a scene, he doesn't know Queen Hecuba. Queen Hecuba's mythical anyway, and yet he's crying. And Hamlet is basically saying, why can't I, Hamlet, motivate myself to the same level of emotion? I'm in a real drama. I have a real duty, and yet I can't bring myself, in a sense, to ultimately do it. The philosopher Machiavelli regarded Christianity as having a fatal weakness. And the fatal weakness in his view was not just turn the other cheek, but a kind of excess of conscience, a kind of sickly conscience that prevents you from exercising your true responsibility. So Shakespeare here implicitly brings out this Machiavellian critique, because what he brings out is that Hamlet cannot somehow bring himself to carry out his duty. And by not doing it, what happens? Well, by not doing it, what happens is he stabs his uncle in the confusion. He kills Polonius. He drives his own fiancée, Ophelia, to suicide. He contributes to his own mother's death. Ultimately, what happens is there are bodies, as I say, all over the stage, and Denmark is defenseless against a foreign invader, Fortinbras from Norway, who ultimately comes in and takes over the throne. So this is a big mess that Hamlet has made. Shakespeare's own view, I think, is not an endorsement of the Machiavellian approach at all, but rather an embrace of what I would call the concept of active Christian statesmanship, the kind of statesmanship that we see in one of Shakespeare's history plays, Henry V. So Henry V, for example, is a Christian king, in some ways Shakespeare's model Christian king. Not a perfect man by any means, but nevertheless a good ruler. Why? Because he combines conscience and an element of, you may say, Machiavellianism. In other words, he does what needs to be done. Why? Not because it is unjust. There's nothing unjust in Hamlet avenging his father's death and getting rid of an evil king who has become a tyrant and since the fish rots at the head, is polluting the whole society. Hamlet would be doing not just himself a favor, but Denmark a favor if he were to have acted sooner. He doesn't do it. And so I close with the words that St. Augustine, of all people, once said. He said, pray as if everything depends on God, but act as if everything depends on you.